Greetings, salutations, and hallucinations, those team defenders. We're back again. It's vaping with Uncle JoeJoe time. Back in the vape cave as always. And yeah, with that head, you see that pistol is missing. That's because it's riding my right hip right now, like she always does. Tonight we're going to be discussing, by request, the wicking of the Eciggity Ehpro Billow 2, which is one hell of a nice tank, I have to tell you right now. The main thing to remember is this. This is not the only method. This is may not be the best method, but it is a method. So remember that. I'm not trying to say that this is the best or the only. Okay, just get that straight. But this is a method that works for me very consistently. It's derived from my other tanks with a few adjustments for the Billow. The Billow tends to be a little more, shall we say, quirky. Actually, the better word would be finicky. She likes her wicks a certain length within a certain little area. Then too long or too little, and you wind up giving problems. Not a very forgiving tank. Much better than the Billow 1. The original Billow, oh my God, was just... She was frustration in the form of a tank, I promise you. You know, it was like basically like one of those god-awful Kafins and a few other just quirky things thrown in for the heck of it, and it drove me nuts. Still got one. There it is right there. Haven't used it in a while because it's just a pain in the butt. But we're about to get down and dirty. I'm going to show you my method. As I said, it's not the only one. Probably ain't the best one, and that's fine. But for me, it works. It works consistently. It gives me consistent wicking over the entire range. And I generally, as you can see right now, she's running 60 watts. Oops, upside down, of course. But that's 60 watts. Now, this is on my Tesla 120. Like I said, that's 60 watts. She'll run higher than that if you want to. It's up to you, entirely up to you. I've run, whether I'm running this on a Sig, on one of my Eciggity 150s, or I'm running on this, don't matter, or on my Tesla Ebony 120. Doesn't matter. I'll run, you know, I average usually with this tank about 60 watts, depending on the flavor. Some flavors a little less, some flavors a little more. There are some that I have jumped up 70 watts. This tank actually, and I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead. Here's 70 watts. All right, let's get up under the hood and see how to tune this puppy. You feel me? And we're back. Now we're going to flip her around and take a look. What we've got here, I've got it sitting up on top of this, just a lot easier to work with. And as you can tell by looking at these coils, these are twisted. This is 26 gauge Canthal twisted. She's coming in just a touch over 2 ohms, which is about where I like to live. What we have here is just a sheet of Shishido cotton. Now what I did do was take the compressed strip off of the top. It's very thin, it's paper thin. Try to remove just it. It doesn't wick all that well, so I generally pull it off. Roll it up good and tight. Now again, this is not to say this is the only way to wick it, or even the best way. This is just after a bit of experimentation. This is the way that works best for me with this particular tank. I found that the Billows tend to be a little bit on the eccentric side. And I need some new scissors. That's the best pair I've got, which is kind of scary. Trim that nasty mess there off. Pull it back a wee bit. Now, of course, what I'm going to be dripping on here tonight will be Dr. Creamy's Creme Brulee, my favoritist juice of all time. Not trying to get this super saturated, just trying to get it wet. It's just easier to work with. Once you get it wet, it tends to behave itself a whole lot more. The rule of thumb that I've found to be true with the Billow too is less is more. If you put too much, it tends to clog up. And if you put too little, it will leak. I have found after trial with trial and error, leaking is generally due to the fact that I just didn't put enough wicking in there. So since then, I haven't had a trouble with a leak, but I have had wicking issues, dry hits, that sort of thing. Now, what I'm doing here is trying to do, come on camera, focus in for me. That's a little better. Now, here's your airflow. One step below that is the deck, which is here. Then this is your juice canal. Trying to get that cotton to sit right on top of that deck with just a little bit hanging down into the canal. Not trying to stop it up. Not trying to clog it up like a drain. Just trying to make sure I don't have a whole lot in there. So I'm still leaving some of this up here. That's fine. I'll poke it back a little bit behind. Another thing, if you get this thing full and when you screw it in, it gets caught in the threads and it'll actually pull some of the cotton around, and it'll pull it tight enough to where it actually won't wick properly because it's so tight. Like I said, I've been playing with this thing for a while. I've tried filling it up till the cotton goes all the way down the juice canals, and I was having problems with the cotton burning through in the middle of the coil at that point. I just could not get it to wick. This method, on the other hand, tends to work, for at least for me, pretty doggone good. Like I said, I'm going to push a little bit extra back there so I don't have it all bunched up. Like I said, what we're looking at, trying to get this bad boy to focus just a wee bit. As you can kind of tell here, and the camera's just not wanting to act right tonight, and apparently it may not. It's not the best camera in the world. But like I said, you have the top here, then you have an actual deck that drops to here, like a top of a T. Then you have your actual canal. And I don't want just a whole lot hanging down in that canal. If I do, it tends to stop up. Also, with this twisted, I tend to have to go on there, be kind of careful when I'm putting it on. I want to try to watch and make sure I'm not bunched up really bad. If I am, I'm going to have to go back and trim. This spot here, for instance, a lot of it is in the feel. If it's really catchy and it feels like it's just grabbing real bad, that's usually because you've got cotton in the threads, and that's why it's so hard to screw on. But if it goes on really easy, more than likely you've got it. Now, as a general side note, once you get this side piece on, this is with all your tanks. Well, except for the Goliath. The Goliath is a bit of a different story since you're going to screw the tank all the way on anyway, but it equals out to the same. You want to go ahead and give it a couple of test fires, because if you get too close to this sidewall, it will arc, it'll short, it'll give you some really weird things. Eciggity's, for instance, sometimes I'll get such varying ohm loads, it'll jump from 0.2 all the way to 3 ohms. And back every time you hit the button, a different ohm load. It'll pop up a short, or it'll heat for a second, then it'll pop up to say short, and it's generally because your coils are too close here. And it depends on just how close too close is. There's a little tiny bit of a gap there, and a little bit of an arc will cause it to get some weird readings all the way up to 2. If they get right up against it, you're talking about just a straight dead short. That's going to work out, looks like, rather nicely, and I'm going to pour a little extra in there. Not much, just a little, to keep things interesting. Now, the beautiful thing about the Billow, too, the Goliath's a bit of a booger, and the reason is, when they drill in their juice wells, they drill directly into the sides that you're screwing into, and that always causes problems. This one has round threading all the way around, so see, you simply turn it upside down, and it screws on just as smooth as butter. You set it back up, and generally speaking, you're going to see a couple little bubbles. A few little bubbles are going to pop out of there. And she's good to go. All right, we're back. Hopefully that's going to help somebody out. I really do. I would appreciate it if you got any questions, comments, suggestions, what have you, put them in the comment box. I'll answer them as fast as I can. And while you're down there, if you don't mind, smash that like and subscribe button for me. I need all the subs I can get. Help an old man out. What the heck? It ain't gonna cost you nothing. It's free. Just a little click, 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 click. There you go. All right. Now, like I said, the basic thing to remember with the Billow 2 is she is slightly finicky. Just a little bit, though. Less is more, so you just want to bring your cotton down there, right on top of the deck, comb a little bit in there. If it does not seem to be wicking quite the way you want it, it still seems to be a little bit slow, take your tank off, pull your collar up, pop the cotton up, trim just a little bit off. You want all four to be as close to identical as possible. Trim just a little bit, I mean a tiny little bit off. Put it all back together again and keep vaping. Still seems, and that's how I did this. This is how I came up with my method, was trimming it. I tried going longer and it got worse, much worse. And I started going the opposite way. I went back to where I was and started trimming back until I got down to the method of cotton sitting right slap on the deck. I push a little bit more back behind it a little bit and then a little bit into the canal itself, and that's it. Now, for those of you who wonder about this sort of thing, cotton wicks like this. The dry strands will hit liquid. As that liquid gets in there, it causes the cotton to expand. That expansion causes suction, and as it works its way up the cotton strand, it's constantly swelling back here, creating suction, which continuously is pulling the juice, liquid of whatever type, up into the cotton until they meet. So if you put it down too much into the canals, when you put the collar on, it's going to squeeze that cotton tight and it can't wick. It can't expand. It can't suck that juice up in there. And it's going to do it slowly or pretty much not at all. Close enough not to matter, and you're going to wind up burning your wicks up real bad. Now, if it does start developing a slightly funky taste, that's generally probably because what's going on is you're burning the cotton inside of the coil itself. It's time to take them out and just start all over again. If it starts tasting funky, the best bet, pull that cotton out of there, wash the top of the eddy off a little bit with water, dry burn the coils, re-wick. Now, whether you do the whole entire tank or not, that's entirely up to you. When I was doing this, I was generally filling mine maybe a quarter to half the way, just because I had actually burned a couple of coils and I didn't want to waste any more juice. That was during the experiment phase, and I worked at it for several days off and on, because I'm doing this at work and at home and I'm doing other things. So it's not like I'm sitting here for hours, you see what I'm saying? But I did play with this, and this is how I came to this conclusion. I tried more. It was horrible. I started all over again and started going back up the canals, until finally, like I said, drop it right down level with the deck with a little bit combed into the canal. If it's too fat, you might want to comb some back up and put some back up in there. Just make sure you're not covering your air holes. Slam your coil, slap down to the air hole. It's going to spring back up on its own. It's springy metal, whether you're using Kanthal, nichrome, whatever. If it doesn't seem right, grab you out of your precision screwdriver set, grab that 1 or 2 millimeter. Just if you're kind of worried, grab that 2 millimeter. If that 2 millimeter will fit between the air hole and the coil, you're fine. That's all you need. Anywhere from 1 to 2 millimeters, you're good to go. You got plenty. You just don't want your coil to be too long. I mean, your cotton to be too long. So the longer it is, the farther the juice has to travel in order to be into the coil where you can actually use it. So you want to slam it down to shorten that distance. And those are the only 2 lessons that you really need to bear in mind. Keep it down low and don't get it too long. You can always play with it. Like I said, pop it out, trim it, put it back together, keep at it until you get it to where you want it. And after a while, you'll get right there. You'll find your sweet spot and you'll automatically do it. Now, I wick this, when I finally got this one done, I wick it the same on this one. This is what I do on my Goliath now, because it's become a habit with this one. I started doing it on the Goliath and it works just fine. So I do all my tanks the way I do this one. The Goliath's much more forgiving, but she doesn't hold as much juice. Kind of depends on which one you want. More forgiving, slightly easier to work on, but less juice. You gotta take the collar off, but that does protect the wicking. So that's pretty much a dead even flop. That's a wash on that. Holds more juice, slightly more finicky. Personally, the Billow 2 is a fantastic tank. You're not going to go wrong with grabbing this tank. You're going to really enjoy it. Once you get the wicking the way you want it, man, you're going to love this thing. Like I said, folks, that's 70 watts, and she'll run that all the time. I actually run this tank hotter than I do any other tank I have. I typically run my other tanks around 50. I run this one 60 and 70 all the time. She seems to like it. So there you go. All right, I'm out of here. If your life doesn't seem to be quite the way you want it and you're stressed out, stress is like a faith. Get with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Jesus is the way, my brothers. He is the way, the light, and the truth. No one goes to the Father except through him. He is the Son. You got me. You feel me. He can hook you up. That's what stress is. You fight with the good Lord. You ain't going to win. Give it up. Give it to him. Now then, remember this. I love each and every one of you. Hope you have a blessed night. I hope your lives are overflowing with blessings to the point where you don't even know which way to go. Life is so great. You know what I'm saying? That's my wish for you. Because I love each and every one of you. I truly do. And remember this. Peas and cornbread.